You found the Backup Wrap-Up, your go-to podcast for all things backup, recovery, and cyber recovery. In this episode, we look at privilege escalation attacks through the lens of Mr. Robot Season 1, Episode 4. We look at how threat actors use stolen credentials as a foothold to gain higher-level access to your systems, and why your backup person might be the biggest security risk. From vertical attacks that exploit known vulnerabilities to horizontal attacks that spread throughout shared file systems, we cover the real-world tactics that turn a small breach into a complete disaster. We also talk about why tape isn't going anywhere. I hope you enjoy this episode. By the way, if you don't know who I am, I'm W. Curtis Preston, aka Mr. Backup. I've been passionate about backup and recovery for over 30 years. Crazy when I say that out loud. Ever since I had to tell my boss that we had no backups of the production database that we had just lost. I don't want that to happen to you, and that's why I do this. On this podcast, we turn unappreciated admins into cyber recovery heroes. This is the Backup Wrap-Up. Welcome to the show. Hi, I'm W. Curtis Preston, aka Mr. Backup, and with me I have a guy who my phone referred to this morning as Molly Andy. like I'm meeting with Molly Persona. Molly Andy, how's it going, Persona?
I'm good. I'm actually not surprised. Most AI voice translation things don't do my name properly. Like even the car does not get my name right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's like who?
What? Oh, you talk to the car with your name?
Well, if I'm like calling someone and it's like, oh, here's the name, like it doesn't understand. Because every once in a while I try.
Yeah.
I'm like, I wonder what it shows up as.
Yeah, your first name typically shows up as Persona.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I have to do when I edit the podcast, because the podcast has a transcript. First thing I have to do is a global replace of persona to persona, and then I have to replace any personals.
Oh.
Because, you know, it turns the personal into personal. Yeah, that's what literally it's the first thing I do every time I edit the episode. The funny little things about your name. So, good morning.
Morning, Curtis. How you doing this bright early Friday morning?
Doing all right. Finished my morning walk and dumbbell workouts, a new thing for me.
Nice. I'm actually proud of how consistent you've been with your walks.
I'm trying. That's kind of the whole point, right? Is like, I did read a book called the Compound Effect, and it's about like small changes, small things that you do on a very regular basis. You do this like every single day, literally every single day, and that it, and it's about the effect of things over time, right? So and it starts out with the following analogy or following. I guess it's an analogy. If you were given a choice, and I know I asked you this already, but for the listeners, if you were given a choice of $3 million or a penny that doubles every day for 31 days, what would you choose? You chose the correct answer, but I think it was because you knew what was going on. Yeah. I probably would choose the correct answer too, but only because I knew it's a setup. Because the answer is a penny that doubles every day for 31 days will be worth $10 million at the end of 31 days, right?
Yeah.
So anyway.
It would have been interesting if instead of 31 days, they say you have a penny that doubles every day for a month. Because if it was February and a non-leap year,
it would be only,
it'll be less.
2.5 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He specifically says 31 days because it's the 31st day that turns 5 million into 10 million. And it's still hard to fathom that, right? That a penny can turn into $1 million like by doubling every day. But that's just, I just want to know where I can do that. Because I got plenty of pennies.
Yeah, well, maybe one day the penny, maybe one day the material from pennies will be worth more than a penny. So there's your doubling.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I did see this thing this morning or last night. There's a guy that I watch on Reels that is a lawyer. It's lawyer response, right? And it always has these little clips of people doing stuff, and then he responds as to whether or not who's right, who's wrong. Mm-hmm. And it was a guy that was paying a parking ticket or a ticket with 7,000 pennies, and they were all loose, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, we're not going to accept this. I have to be. And he goes, yeah, no, you have to.
It's legal tender.
He just walks away. He's like,
yeah,
my ticket's been paid. And, the lawyer makes the thing of saying because they're a government entity, they're required to accept any legal tender.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that would definitely feel good. Walk in with a big pile of pennies here, count them. But anyway, well, speaking of ridiculous things, we're gonna talk about privilege escalation, and we're gonna use season 1, episode 4, aka 1.3 of Mr. Robot, which is a great show, and I just really love the show, and and it's called Daemons, right? Which is spelled Daemons for those who don't know. I'm not sure if, for those that didn't grow up in the Linux, Unix world, I'm not sure if that's a word that's in everybody's vocab, even if you're a techie.
I don't know if that's maybe
they might
not.
think of it as like service agents or something like that, right? Yeah. A daemon is a process. It's literally, it may be just Unix terminology, but it's a process that runs all the time to do something without user interaction.
Yeah.
Elliot actually gives that definition in this episode.
Yeah.
Well, let's. Do you want to do the summary of the episode?
Sure. So what happened in this episode? There's I think 4 things that happened, and keep me honest here. So the first is that Mr. Robot and Elliot, right, and the rest of the crew, they all get together and they all discuss sort of how they're going to take down Steel Mountain.
Yeah, Steel Mountain. Yeah.
Right. And this is where Elliot starts to talk about the backup technologies, which Curtis has probably brought a tear to your eye. They use tape, right? LTO9.
I like that he called it linear tape open 9. Yep. I was like, oh, come on, Elliot. Yeah. No one says that. It sounds cool though on TV.
Yeah. So they talk about sort of how they're going to actually hack it, and just quickly high level, right? They're going to basically take over the thermostats and jack up the temperature and destroy the tape that's there. So that's kind of the one thing. And spoiler alert, because later on you learn that they basically have a very, very short time frame to do this before the tapes get distributed amongst all the different sites. Today, it is all stored in one location.
Yeah, if it's not obvious, don't watch this if you haven't watched the episode, right? That's the true of all these episodes.
Yeah. So that's kind of the first thing. So that's the first thing that happens. The next thing that happens is that... Is it the next thing? Oh, the next thing that happens is while they're in process of being like, hey, we have to do this major hack, we're in a compressed time frame, Elliot, who was basically now, or was on morphine and is now like going through a crash, right? In the middle, he's like, I need to basically stop the hack for now, and they lock him in a hotel room where he's going through withdrawals.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the second major thing that happens. The third thing that happens is in order for this hack to actually be successful, they need to not only attack Steel Mountain in the US, but they need to also attack the China data centers. And so Doreen, one of the other hackers, she meets with one of her contacts with the hacker group in China called Dark Army and tries to get their help in making the attack. It's a little sketchy. They go to like a pool hall, and then they get in the back of some random person's limo, and then they go somewhere else. And they
got like scary. They're wearing scary Chinese
clown
masks. Yeah.
Was it Chinese dragon mask or clown mask? I don't remember.
No, they were Chinese dragons.
Okay. Yeah. So that also happens. And then sort of the final part of all of this is there's that entire Angela Ollie drama going on where he got a CD and they told him it hacked his laptop at home. They downloaded a bunch of footage, right? And now they're like, you need to go install this at AllSafe. So Angela basically steals the CD, goes into the office, puts the CD in, and runs whatever is on that CD.
Now, you're better at remembering some of these details. Why does she want to do that now?
Because
what's her motivation?
Her motivation is that they basically have all of her dad's info, right? All of her info, because she had the bank accounts all linked together. She had logged into her dad's, right? And she's like, they're going to wipe out my family. They have all my information. They're going to release it. They have these videos, personal videos of her like in the bathroom going and taking a shower, right? All the rest of this.
Okay.
And all so she's like, we just have to do what they say.
You know, it's funny. We got a comment on the YouTube video. And the comment was that the CD basically becomes a character in the show. I guess the CD continues on, past this episode. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Love the comment, by the way.
And by the way, if you like the show, please leave us a comment. You can catch us on your favorite podcatcher. You can also watch our glorious faces at 8:30 in the morning on a Friday on YouTube and see all of our expressions. But we like to hear from you. So please leave us a note. Yeah, drop us a comment.
Yeah, we love the comments. Yeah. So
did I miss anything from the summary?
No, I think that's it. Yeah. So let's talk about the tape.
So in the episode, right, in addition to calling it by its formal name, right, Elliot also mentions, because they want to do this attack where they want to raise the temperature in the building to destroy the tapes, and he gives a very specific band for what temperature LTO-9 operates at. Yeah, any comments, Curtis?
Yeah, well, first off, his range is a bit low, right? LTO.
I think it was.
Yeah, it was up to 95 degrees. And he's like, after 95 degrees, it's going to start. Basically, he's talking about the substrate. So for those that don't know, linear tape open, right? That's what LTO is the most common backup tape used today, and it was back then as well. And we were still a fan of tape, right? Let's just talk about that for a minute. As we've mentioned multiple times in the show, a lot of people have a lot of misinformation about tape and a lot of misunderstandings about tape. They think that the problem with tape is slow. That was never the problem with tape. The problem with tape is actually that it's too fast, and that an LTO-9 tape with compression is over a gigabyte a second. Okay, that is not slow. Okay. And the real problem is that it really only has two speeds. It has stop and it has a gigabyte a second. Okay. And so there's a little bit of variability in there, but not much, right? Yeah. And the problem is that especially incremental backups run really, really slow, and they're running at like a couple of megabytes per second. Meanwhile, the tape wants 1,000 megabytes per second. And that's just a fundamental mismatch in technology. Yeah. The tape does this thing of going back and forth, trying to keep up with the slow speed. And that's what we call shoe shining. It wears out the tape. It wears out the head. It makes the tape unreliable. That's the problem with tape as the primary mechanism for backup, especially incremental backup, which is the backup that we do most of the time, right? The other thing is that, but, having said all of that, if you can address that concern, tape can be used as the ultimate offsite copy, right? We believe in the 3-2-1 rule, right? Having an extra copy and having that extra copy offsite. There is, in terms of immutability, both like protection in terms of protection from hackers, protection from bit rot. Tape is better at holding on to ones and zeros than disk is. That's just a fact. Go watch our episode on immersivity. Yeah. Right. I'll find that episode. There's a the episode says like tape designer schools Mr. Backup on tape design or something like that.
We'll include a link in the show description.
Yeah, we'll put a link in there. Anyway, you just gave me more work, but thanks. But anyway, I'll do it. Fine. That's the problem, right? But if you can solve that problem, you can use tape as a way to hold an offsite copy. Now, there's a lot of other cool stuff about disk, things like being able to randomly and easily test backups. Tape is still, like logistically, it's a little harder.
Yeah.
And let's face it, it's a lot harder when it comes to full recovery, right? But it's still a great way to store data offsite. And if you can basically have a disk copy and then you just copy that to tape, like in the backup system, not like going across the network, you can actually have a very solid, reliable copy on tape. And then you can hand it to a man in a van, right?
That take it somewhere else. Yep.
Take it somewhere else, like Steel Mountain, okay? And what he's describing in the in this episode is what he wants to do is he wants to raise the temperature of the room where the tape is stored, causing there's the substrate and then there's the recording layer, and then there's a protection layer on top of that. And basically he wants to raise the temperature up to the point where those separate. And once they separate, then the tape is going to become unusable. Go ahead.
Do you remember in the episode, the example? So when he talks about this, I think all the other hackers have no idea because they're like, what is tape?
Yeah,
right? And they're like, and so he goes and he finds a cassette tape.
Yeah.
And he pulls out the substrate, right? The actual tape pieces in there.
Yeah.
And then he puts it on like I think it was a coffee, a hot plate.
Yeah.
And you just see it like start to smoke and like where he's like, that's what we're going to do to tape.
Yeah. I think that was more for the viewer. I think
yes.
But yeah, I completely agree. And it's like, okay, except you're going to need a lot higher than 95 degrees.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So I went and I checked because it's not something that, like, normally people, if they're going to store tapes, they keep it in an ambient sort of normal temperature for human beings, and that's a perfectly fine temperature. And I went and checked. The actual upper limits of LTO 9 is actually 125 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 51.667 degrees Celsius for our international listeners. And that's really hot. Yeah. That's like
I don't even know
in the summer. Yeah. Hot.
I don't even know if like HVAC systems would even allow that sort of a temperature. Like normal in building HVAC, not specialized equipment.
Yeah. So I think we found a plot hole.
But that's okay. They needed something plausible.
Yeah. And by the way, this is similar. By the way, I want to tell a story, and then we'll come back to. So, I actually worked in a printer company. It was a consulting gig at a printer company, and this place was a hot mess. Okay, one of the problems they had was that they had a CIO, and then they had two people that reported to the CIO, and they both thought the other was a complete moron, and they were both correct, and they would give us conflicting instructions. You know, the whole thing of like, no man can serve two masters. Yeah, well, that was it. We were being given conflicting instructions. Yeah. Well, one of the morons, his thing was, it's a waste of money to keep a computer room cool.
What?
So he literally, the computer room of this billion-dollar corporate, I assume it's multi-billion. It's not a household name now. It was a household name back then. Maybe this is why.
Yeah.
They got acquired, I think. But it was like 85 degrees, Fahrenheit, which is around 30 degrees Celsius, in the data center all the time, and that's what he kept it at. And we were like, what are you doing, right? This is not good. The problem was the vendors would basically said, he's technically correct. Like, it's within the range of operating temperatures.
But not recommended.
Right? Yeah, not recommended, not normal, but you can't say that the servers are going to break down because it's 80 degrees. And we're like, but it's hot in here. But this also reminded me of the scene from Sneakers, which, again, if you haven't seen Sneakers, please go watch Sneakers. It's one of the best movies about social engineering and, cybersecurity. The premise is ridiculous, kind of like this part.
But that's okay.
Ridiculous, but that's okay. But it's also, there's some really funny scenes. The scene of the blind guy driving the van is one of my favorite scenes. But their whole thing is that they had a motion sensor thing, and their way of getting around the motion sensor was to raise the climate control in the data center to 98.6, right? Which is the temperature of a human body, and then just walk real slow. And it worked in the show, right? So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you could actually do that. It's actually more likely that all you need to do is shut off the climate control system. Yeah. Leave it alone.
And then it'll raise.
And it'll get super hot. I don't think it's going to get 125 degrees. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But I do actually know our friend of the pod, Jeff Rockland. He worked at I think this was when he was at Disney Feature Animation. They had a thing where the Lieberts, right? The Liebert, for those that don't know, is the big, very expensive air conditioner that, that cools a data center. The Liebert failed. I think there was like a power, like a breaker trip, and so the Liebert completely failed. And the problem with that was that the temperature monitoring system that tells, people how the Liebert is doing was part of the Liebert. And so when the breaker tripped and the Liebert went off, so did the system that was telling him that the Liebert wasn't working. And so Jeff basically walked into the data center one day, and it was a sauna. So I don't know if we could actually raise it to 95 degrees, but I actually think again that if we just
shut it off,
the cooling system off, all of that heat in there. Well, but wait, this is a tape library. That's not going to be the case.
Yeah, that's not going to be the case. Yeah. The other interesting thing, so getting the tape up to the temperature, right? The other interesting part was actually hacking the thermostats in order to raise the temperature. And so when I heard that scene, and they were trying to figure out, and they were like, oh, let's go figure out the schematics and figure out what brand it is and figure out if there are any known vulnerabilities, all the rest of that. And when I was watching that scene, there were two examples that popped into my head. The first was with Dwayne from Red Team, where he said that he was hired. So go back and listen to the episode, but basically they were told to hack into a company, right, and test its security, and they couldn't figure out because everything was secure. And then they were walking into the lobby and they saw a TV and they noted the brand and they bought the same TV and were able to figure out what firmware it is and then what the issues were. And they basically hacked the TV, which then allowed them to get access into the network.
Right.
And that was very similar to what they were talking about here. And then the second one is maybe a few months ago, there was a ransomware attack on a company and they tried once again to get in and they weren't able to do it. Because basically anytime they try to deploy the malware, their EDR solution would lock it down. And what they ended up doing was they realized that there was a network camera, right? One of those cameras connected to the network, and they downloaded it and they realized that it had an issue. They exploited it, and they used the network camera to then encrypt everything else on the network.
Yep.
Right? From a network camera. And those are the two sort of things that popped to mind was IoT devices, if you don't secure them and don't isolate them, they could be a huge hole in your network defenses.
Yeah, and by the way, this is why we chose to talk about privilege escalation in this episode. The other famous privilege escalation or attack like that via IoT is the Target attack. Right, they hacked via the HVAC system.
Yeah.
Right, and in this case, they're literally hacking the HVAC system so they can do this other thing. They're not using the HVAC system as a root. They're going to hack the HVAC system.
Yeah.
There was another one that came to my mind. What was the? Dang it. Anyway, and so there, when we talk about privilege escalation, let's just talk about that for a minute. The idea is that you're going to take the privileges that you have, that you're able to get access to, and then you're going to use those privileges to see if you can get more privileges. Does that seem like a good summary of that? Okay.
Yeah. And one of the things happening as we're recording this episode is there is a ransomware group called Scattered Spider.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this on a couple podcast episodes ago, but basically what they're doing is they're using social engineering to call into companies, impersonating people, getting a password reset done, and then using that to explore the network and finding who the virtual center admins are, VMware admins are, doing password resets of them, gaining access into the VMware environments, and then basically downloading password files, encrypting entire networks, exfiltrating data, right?
Yeah.
All of these things, right?
Yeah, so that, our last episode was about social engineering. So that's privilege escalation through social engineering.
Yeah.
Right? There are two sort of traditional, sort of electronic methods of privilege escalation. They're referred to as a vertical attack and a lateral attack, right? So a vertical or a horizontal attack. The vertical attack is, I think, what most people think about when they think of a traditional privilege escalation attack, and that is where you gain access. It all starts with access, right? Yeah. That initial access broker, the person who gets the threat actor access to the network. So you need that. So that's
it's like a foothold.
Credentials. What?
It's like a foothold.
Yeah. You need that first, right? So once you're in the network, but you have this you're Steve, the new guy.
Yeah.
Right. And he has no privilege. He is.
Yep.
He's, somebody did another concept that we talk about a lot, the least access concept, least privilege. Sorry, the least privilege concept. Do you want to just talk about that? What do I mean by that?
Least privilege basically means only give permissions, control, access to only what is required for that person's job and nothing more. So if Steve, the new person, only needs access to one system, don't make him admin across all systems across your entire network.
Exactly. And this is why, one of the things that distresses me.
Only one thing?
One of the things that distresses me is that it is still so common to give the job of the backup person to the F&G, right? The new guy, right? And the problem with that is they quite possibly are the least trained in cybersecurity. We made this point in the book. By the way, the book is coming out, Learning Ransomware Response and Recovery. We are going to finish the tech edit by October, by the first week in October. But you can get access to it now by signing up for the O'Reilly Learning Platform. You can get access to the very unedited version that's available right now. Anyway, we made this point in the book that that the new person is the least trained in matters of cybersecurity, and we often hand them the job of backup. And the problem with backup is it is an all-powerful role. You have not only do you have access to all the data, you have access to delete all the data, right? And this is another reason why you need true immutability.
A true immutability means that even if that person is a threat actor that was hired specifically to get this job and to destroy your data, they won't be able to.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I'll step off my
your
soapbox. What were we talking about?
We were talking about privilege escalation, and you were talking about vertical, which you were just about to talk about before you got
back. So a vertical privilege escalation attack is where I gain that initial access, and then I use a known exploit or an unknown.
Or an unknown. Yeah.
It needs to be known to me, but I use an exploit of some other program to then gain access that I wouldn't have otherwise. And the best example that I have of that is the ransomware attack that happened to Rackspace back a few years ago, right?
Yep.
There was a known vulnerability. There was a workaround to that vulnerability, and so Rackspace had patched there was a workaround and there was a patch. They had not put on the patch because they had done the workaround, but it turned out there was an unknown vulnerability.
Yep.
Like a 0-day vulnerability that was able to exploit the same vulnerability, and that's how they gained additional privileges, and then they were able to just wipe out the Exchange world. So that's a traditional vertical privilege escalation, and then the lateral is actually a little bit more what's the word? Sneaky.
It's sneaky, and I think it's like you said. Most people think about vertical. Yeah. I don't think that everyone thinks about horizontal.
Yeah. So the idea with the horizontal one is I'm able to get access to, again, we'll go, was it Steve? Is that what I said?
Yeah, Steve. Poor Steve.
What I then, if I can find a file server where Steve is able to read and write data, that not just Steve's directory, but everybody's directory, if there's a group directory. So if I can go in there and I can plant an exploit in a file, like a Word macro, for example, if I can plant this in a file that others would then open, they will then run the malware for me.
Yep.
And that would be how we would, and then that malware would give me the privilege that I want, that I want, because I can leverage the privilege of that other person who has a higher privilege than me. And by me, I mean the threat actor.
Yeah.
I'm not a threat actor.
But I think that becomes so difficult to both quantify as well as protect, because think about it. Most companies, they want free open access. Like, most people don't lock everything down and prevent this sort of access. And so it becomes difficult. And it's one of those things where security then becomes a hindrance for productivity, and no one wants to do it.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about what a macro exploit is?
Sure. Macro exploit. So if you think about like Word or Excel, actors can create macros, which is basically code that exists within that document that can be triggered anytime it loads. So it might be, as an example, a shortcut that loads a bunch of data and filters things out. But macros are very powerful because it's code, right? So you can program it however you want, and it has access to resources in the system. And unlike a non-macro Word version, it kind of runs automatically in the background, right? Or could run automatically in the background depending on permission settings. And so this is another way where threat actors can send you something which you then open, and now it's running code which might exploit a vulnerability in your system. Yeah, so exactly. If you look, a lot of times people send like, hey, here's a PDF of a receipt for something you may not have ever bought, and people go and open it.
Yeah.
Right, in emails. Those are the sort of things that they're hoping people will do.
Yeah, and so hopefully your Microsoft Office, if you do open a spreadsheet or a Word doc or a PowerPoint that has macros in it, it should warn you. Yep. Right? Hey, there's macros in this, and you should go, why? No, I don't. No, I don't want to run the macros. Right? Unless they're macros that you made, or someone else made that that you trust, you should not be running those.
But that's hard though. Take your Steve example. Maybe you trust Steve, and the threat actor impersonated Steve and shared a macro, and you're like, oh yeah, I trust Steve. Let me open it.
Yeah, well then,
Kaboom.
Then you should ask Steve. Steve, did you put macros in this document? I know it's hard. Cybersecurity is hard, right? But that's a lateral or a horizontal privilege escalation.
Or Steve never writes macros, and all of a sudden you see a document with a macro. You should probably ask Steve directly.
Yeah, Steve, do you know what a Excel macro is? What's an Excel macro? Yeah. Oh, shite. So in this case, in this episode, the privilege that they escalate, it's not. I don't know if it's kind of a privilege escalate. The privilege that he's escalating is the privilege of going inside the vault, right?
Yeah.
And then he's going to then connect this. It's a Raspberry Pi, right? I do like in the episode that he takes the Raspberry Pi out of the little Raspberry Pi case, and they're like, "We know what a Raspberry Pi is." I'm assuming most people listening to the episode know what a Raspberry Pi is, but just in case, it's a thing you can buy, just a little credit card sized computer. That has
it's a little micro
USB, HDMI, Ethernet.
A whole bunch of connectivity. It's like 4 gigs of memory, and it's only like $40, $30, something very cheap.
You'll spend more in peripherals than you do on the thing, Anyway, so that's what he's gonna, and it's really small, and so you could use it to to put in there, and then use it to control the climate control system, and then do the thing that he wants, which we don't think is possible, but
it's okay.
Really
creative
right now.
It's creative liberties, Curtis. Creative liberties.
Yeah. So I will say this also reiterates physical security.
Yep.
So even if Elliot has the privilege to go into a vault, this is a company whose job it is to store other people's data. He should never be left alone, unescorted, inside anywhere in that building. And I will give you a great example of how this can be properly done, even though at the time it really felt onerous. So last year, I was working for the company that had me go to a very large, tape vault. I mean, this thing was million tapes in there.
Wow.
And we, the way it worked, we came up to, first off, it was in the middle of nowhere. There was no gas storage facility next to it. So I originally gave a very detailed explanation of the layout of this company. Persona told me I was being too detailed, so I'm giving a much less detailed, even though I didn't say who it was or where it was. It was really, let's just say, a very, very 10-step process to get from the outer parking lot or the outer street to where the tapes actually were. At least 10 steps, and at no point was I ever left unescorted, including going to the bathroom. So if I was in the vault, and by the way, even in the vault, once we were in the vault, we were in a cage in the vault. Like it was
no free roaming, nothing.
Yeah, no free roaming in the vault. So this. And then, if we had to go to the bathroom, they had to escort us out to the bathroom. I say all of that to say Steel Mountain failed in this show.
Well,
because as I believe in further episodes, he does actually get this thing on
so the other thing is, as he's describing Steel Mountain layout and sort of what they're looking to do, I don't remember if it was this episode or the previous. I remember one of the guys was like, it would be easier for us to go visit Fort Knox than to visit Steel Mountain. Do you remember that line?
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, one of the hackers was like, it would be easier to go visit Fort Knox, which is where the U.S. keeps its gold reserves, rather than going to getting access into Steel Mountain.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way this other vault was, right? And that's the way it should be, right? Anyway, so the whole thing, that physical security really, because if you have one really important concept of cybersecurity is if you have physical access, all bets are off.
Yep.
If you have unfettered,
Yeah.
unmonitored physical access. You can do anything. Okay.
Yep.
And
even when we talk about immutability, right?
Yeah.
Immutability is great, but once someone has physical access to the servers,
Yeah.
all bets are off.
Well, I mean, a torch,
EMP?
Yeah. Ooh, EMP. That sounds. What's an EMP, Persona?
Basically a bomb that goes off that wipes out everything electronic. So think about the Matrix. They use an EMP.
Define the acronym.
The electromagnetic pulse.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a because you said bomb. It's like it's not a bomb per se. It's an electromagnetic bomb.
Yes.
That people wouldn't really feel. I don't think
unless you have a pacemaker.
Oh, unless you have a pacemaker. So I guess if you have a pacemaker, that would be no bueno.
Yes.
Yeah. Then you would be. Well, technically, it would just stop the pacemaker. Then the question would be if you would, when you need the pacemaker next.
Yep.
It would not be able to do its job. There is an additional plot point that you brought up, and that is, I was really, again, I got excited when I heard this. They believe in the 3-2-5 rule.
Oh.
So not all safe. Evil Corp has decided that their data is so important that they're going to store in multiple offsite copies at multiple Steel Mountain facilities, and that's going to happen like next week. And so that's why they have to do this hack like right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it was like 3 days, but yeah.
Yeah. So I applaud Evil Corp for believing in multiple offsite copies. That sounds like a beautiful thing to me. Yeah. Multiple offsite copies on tape. Wow.
Dun, dun, dun.
Sounds like heaven. So the final thing we'll talk about again, and this is kind of a privilege escalation thing too. Again, the person they through social engineering they have a vulnerable person, and they have exploited that the vulnerability in this case. By the way, there's a great scene in there where Ron Cephas Jones, I don't know his character's name, but great actor. He left us 2023, and he's like, this thing's got no vulnerabilities. And Elliot goes, he's looking at the picture, and he goes, I see like 6 vulnerabilities. He sees 6 weak points in the security chain. The humans are always the weakest link in the security chain, and we see that once again with Angela, where Angela, she's been exploited via bad stuff, right? And she's been given what is the new, when we talk about ransomware attacks, essentially she's had ransomware, right?
Yep.
Meaning that they have gained sensitive information about her, both in terms of financial information as well as the compromising information.
Yeah.
And they're extorting her in order to do this thing, right? And so she goes in, and she goes in after hours, which I thought was weird.
No, she went in early morning.
Was it early morning? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was clear like nobody was around.
Yeah.
Why that? Why not just do it?
Because she was going to Ollie's computer.
Oh, she's putting it in Ollie's computer. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah.
And then did you notice the other scene? I don't know if you made this connection. So remember a couple episodes ago when they first got the CD, it was a guy outside selling, being like, hey, listen to my CD, post some links.
Yeah.
That's the exact same guy who Doreen, the hacker, meets up with.
Yes.
As her contact into the Dark Army.
Yes. He's not a good guy.
Yeah. Just.
All right. Well, it's been fun. Season 1, episode 4, aka 1.3 of.
It's so confusing.
Of Mr. Robot. Thanks, Persona. Always fun.
Yeah, no, this was a good episode. I'm excited that we're doing this series because I know the first time I watched Mr. Robot, I loved it. And so rewatching it after the first after so many years, it's good. It still holds sort of, a lot of things are still the same and kind of scary.
Yeah, I think the big difference between then and now is the additional threat of AI.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, I hope the listeners are enjoying this episode. We're making it just for you. Otherwise, just a couple of guys talking.
Which we don't mind either.
What? Yeah, we
Which
don't
we
mind
don't.
either. Yeah. That is a wrap.
The Backup Wrap-Up is written, recorded, and produced by me, W. Curtis Preston. If you need backup or DR consulting, content generation, or expert witness work, check out backupcentral.com. You can also find links for my O'Reilly books on the same website. Remember, this is an independent podcast, and any opinions that you hear are those of the speaker and not necessarily an employer. Thanks for listening.